General William Huxley stood in the center of the Galactic Council chamber, his steel-gray eyes scanning the assembly of alien delegates. His expression was taut, a mask of restraint over the frustration boiling within. The air was thick with the scent of alien atmospheres, a mingling of ozone, spice, and something faintly metallic. High above, a vast dome of crystalline material displayed the stars, twinkling against the abyss of space. It was a magnificent structure, but Huxley had no time for admiration. He was here to deliver a warning, and he already knew it would be ignored. He inhaled sharply and stepped forward. His voice, though calm, carried the weight of urgency. Members of the Council, I stand before you not as an adversary, but as an ally. We intercepted Zerzal transmissions 6 weeks ago, encrypted battle codes, movement directives, and evidence of fleet mobilization. They are coming. This is no mere border skirmish. This is a full-scale invasion. Across the chamber, murmurs rose among the delegates. Some exchanged uneasy glances, but many remained indifferent, their expressions carved from stone. At the head of the assembly, Chancellor Varas of the Zytherian Dominion, a species of tall, scaled humanoids with slitted yellow eyes, leaned back in his elevated throne, flicking his clawed fingers idly against the armrest. General Huxley, Varas drawled, his voice carrying the rasp of his reptilian lineage, your people have a habit of seeing war in every shadow. The Zerzal are a menace, yes, but they have never dared to challenge the full might of the Galactic Armada. They are scavengers, raiders. This is fear-mongering. A flicker of exasperation crossed Huxley's face, but he kept his tone measured. That's precisely the mistake you're making. You assume they fear you. They don't. They've evolved beyond caution. We decrypted their messages. They've developed a new form of quantum phase weaponry, something your fleets have no counter for. If you do not act, they will decimate your defenses before you even realize you've lost. A sharp voice cut through the chamber. Admiral Kelroth, a burly, four-armed veteran from the Tarshan Union, scoffed. And let me guess, humanity holds the answer? Your people barely have a foothold in interstellar warfare. You've been part of this council for what, 2 decades? And now you claim to see what the rest of us cannot. Huxley clenched his jaw. Beside him, Colonel James Johnson, his longtime friend and second-in-command, shifted his stance. Johnson had the air of a man who had seen too many battles and too few victories recognized. His voice, deep and unwavering, filled the chamber. This isn't about pride, Admiral. It's about survival. Your armada relies on outdated doctrines. The Zerzal are moving in coordinated strike formations designed to bypass your defenses before you can react. Varas exhaled in an almost theatrical sigh, his scaled brow arching. I grow tired of this, General. Every cycle, humanity stands before us, warning of ghosts in the void. We have kept this galaxy in order for centuries, and yet we are expected to believe that Earth, one of our youngest members, has insight that eludes our own high command. Huxley exhaled slowly. He wasn't just fighting bureaucracy. He was fighting arrogance, centuries of complacency masquerading as wisdom. He took a step closer, his gaze cutting through the room like a blade. You refuse to believe because it is easier than admitting weakness. You have grown fat off the illusion of peace. But peace does not exist without vigilance. The Zerzal understand that. Do you? A ripple of silence passed through the chamber, but it was broken by laughter, low, guttural, condescending. Varas bared his sharp teeth in a grin. Ah, humans! Always so dramatic. He gestured to the surrounding delegates. Let us humor them. A show of hands, then. Who among us supports deploying our fleets to intercept this so-called invasion? Not a single hand rose. Huxley stood there, jaw tightening, as the Council's decision solidified like a tombstone on the fate of countless worlds. His mind raced through the implications. The Zerzal were likely already in transit. By the time the Council recognized the truth, it would be too late. He exchanged a glance with Johnson, who gave a barely perceptible nod. There was nothing more to say here. Straightening his posture, Huxley's voice hardened. Earth will withdraw all military advisors from your ranks. We will not waste our resources saving those who refuse to save themselves. He turned on his heel, Johnson and Lieutenant Commander Ryan Carter following in his wake. Carter, younger but razor-sharp, muttered under his breath, "They'll regret this." As they reached the exit, a voice low, almost hesitant, called out, "General?" Huxley paused, glancing over his shoulder. The speaker was Ambassador Vexel of the HFY Confederacy, his feline-like features tense with worry. He stepped forward, his movements graceful, deliberate. "I believe you," Vexel said softly. "But the Council, they do not understand war the way you do." Huxley studied him for a moment before replying, "Understanding isn't required. Only survival." Vexel hesitated, then handed over a small data chip. "I cannot move the Council, but perhaps this will be of use to you." Huxley took the chip, without question, and nodded. Without another word, he and his officers strode from the chamber. The moment the doors sealed behind them, Carter let out a harsh breath. That was a damn waste of time. Huxley's gaze was cold, calculating. "No, it wasn't." Johnson frowned. "You knew they wouldn't listen." Huxley nodded. "Exactly. Now we let them burn first." Back at Earth's Lunar Command Center, the atmosphere was a stark contrast to the Council's complacency. Every screen, every interface, was alive with data feeds, strategic projections, and fleet readiness reports. Huxley placed the data chip Vexel had given him into the console. The holographic display flickered before stabilizing. Tactical charts, Zerzal fleet trajectories, estimated planetary targets. Carter leaned in, eyes narrowing. "It's worse than we thought. They're hitting multiple systems simultaneously. If we wait, billions die." Huxley's jaw set. "Then we don't wait." The chamber dimmed as he accessed a restricted feed. A black-hulled fleet, hidden in deep space, powered to life. Unlike the sleek, elegant designs of the Council's vessels, these ships were built with singular purpose: war. Humanity's true fleet. "They think we're just another species in their empire," Huxley murmured, watching as weapon systems charged, engines flaring to life. Johnson crossed his arms. "They're about to learn otherwise." In the silence of deep space, Earth's war machine stirred. The skies over Sirian Prime were a masterpiece of swirling violet and sapphire clouds, the twin suns casting long golden rays across the city's towering spires. It was a world of peace, prosperity, and strategic importance, one of the core planets of the Galactic Council. From the observation deck of the planet's orbital defense station, Admiral Kelroth surveyed the vastness of space with a satisfied expression. The fleet was assembled. Thousands of ships formed a defensive net around the planet, their hulls glinting under the light of the binary stars. Every vessel represented the peak of Council technology. Warships of the Zytherian Dominion, sleek and powerful. Battlecruisers from the Tarshan Union, built for resilience. The elegant yet deadly interceptors of the HFY Confederacy. Together, they were the mightiest armada ever gathered in Council history. Kelroth turned to his second-in-command, a thin-framed Zytherian officer named Vornix. "You see, Commander? The humans panic over nothing. We are prepared." Vornix hesitated before responding. "Admiral, with respect, the humans were certain this was an invasion force. I wonder if we were too quick to dismiss their claims." Kelroth scoffed, folding two of his 4 arms across his chest. "Huxley? He's a warhawk like all humans. Their species is too young to understand restraint. We do not need them." Before Vornix could answer, the station's proximity alarms flared to life. The room bathed in red light, and dozens of holographic displays appeared, each flashing incoming alerts. The automated voice of the station's AI resonated through the control deck. "Unidentified vessels detected. Exceeding known fleet parameters. Warning. Multiple warp signatures detected at extreme range." Calrotha's expression hardened. He turned sharply, eyes locked on the main display. The readings made no sense. Dozens of new signatures were appearing, and they weren't following standard FTL arrival patterns. Instead of materializing in predictable locations, these ships seemed to phase into existence, slipping into real space in abrupt, unnatural bursts. A deep, guttural voice crackled over the open channel. "Pray." That single word sent a ripple of unease through the bridge crew. Calroth straightened. "Identify them?" The station's AI complied immediately. Zerzal warships detected. Calrotha's breath hitched. It was impossible. No Zerzal fleet had ever gathered in numbers this vast. The view screen shifted, magnifying the void beyond. The first thing he noticed was the color black. Not the empty black of space, but something deeper, more unnatural. The hulls of the Zerzal vessels seemed to absorb light, like voids in reality itself. They moved without visible propulsion, slipping through space as if ignoring physics entirely. Then the readings updated. "By the gods," Vornix whispered. "They're already within our defense perimeter." Calrotha's stomach twisted. The Zerzal weren't just arriving. They were already here. A heartbeat later, the first attack struck. Without warning, the Zytherian dreadnought Velos detonated. One moment, the massive warship stood as the symbol of Council power, its shields shimmering like a star. The next, it imploded, not from an external impact, but from within. Its structure collapsed inward, then burst apart in a cascade of white-hot debris. The explosion left no wreckage, only a burning afterimage fading into the void. Calroth barely had time to react before the chaos unfolded in full. Every Zerzal vessel fired simultaneously, not missiles, not energy weapons, but something else. Space itself rippled around their ships, reality distorting as if space-time was being manipulated at will. Wherever those distortions touched, ships vanished. Not destroyed, not damaged, erased. Panic erupted. Admirals screamed orders over comm channels, but none of it mattered. Council warships fired back, unleashing torrents of plasma fire, railgun rounds, and missile barges. None of it found purchase. The Zerzal ships simply phased, flickering out of real space and reappearing elsewhere, avoiding every attack. Calrotha's mind struggled to grasp the horror of what was happening. The Armada, the greatest fleet ever assembled, was being dismantled in minutes. A frantic voice burst over the comms. "This is Seldar Command. We're losing." Static swallowed the rest. "Another ship gone. Valkyr is down. There, by the stars. They're inside the ship." Calrotha's hands clenched into fists. "We need to fall back. Order a full retreat." Vornix was already relaying commands, but it was too late. The Zerzal did not allow retreats. From the planet below, citizens of Syrian Prime looked to the heavens and saw fire. The once glorious fleet, the pride of the Council, was burning. Some ships tried to break atmosphere, seeking sanctuary on the planet's surface, but the Zerzal followed. Calroth turned to his officers, voice steel. "We need to evacuate. Now." A sudden shudder rocked the station. The entire structure groaned, lights flickering. One of the view screens showed a new reading. Something was approaching at impossible speed. Vornix paled. "Admiral, it's them?" And then the station tore apart. The last thing Calroth saw before everything turned to fire was the endless black void of the Zerzal fleet, creeping ever closer. Across the Galactic Council strongholds, desperate transmissions flooded comm channels. Some reached their destinations. Most didn't. At Earth's Lunar Command Center, General William Huxley stood in silence as the Council's distress call played. The voice of Chancellor Varas, once arrogant, now trembled. "General Huxley, we were wrong. Please, save us." Huxley let the silence stretch, letting the weight of their desperation sink in. Then coldly he responded, "Now you're ready to listen." He turned to Johnson and Carter. The room was quiet, save for the hum of machinery. Johnson folded his arms. Orders? Huxley's lips curled into a grim smile. Deploy the fleet. The void of space lay in eerie silence as the remnants of the Galactic Council's fleet burned in the abyss. Sirian Prime, once a beacon of interstellar civilization, was now little more than a charred ruin beneath the crushing presence of the Zerzal Armada. The creatures had not simply conquered, they had erased everything in their path. It was a display of absolute dominance, a reminder that the laws of war were written by those powerful enough to enforce them. But the Zerzal had made a mistake. They had mistaken humanity's warning for weakness. From the bridge of the USS Aegis, the command carrier leading Earth's undisclosed war fleet, General William Huxley observed the battlefield with the steady gaze of a predator. The darkness beyond the reinforced viewport was littered with the wreckage of the Council's arrogance. Now only the Zerzal remained, their sleek, void-black vessels drifting like specters in the dead expanse. Beside him, Colonel James Johnson's expression was carved from stone, his arms crossed over his chest. "They don't even see us yet." Lieutenant Commander Ryan Carter stood at the tactical console, fingers gliding over holographic controls. Stealth systems holding. They're focused on finishing off what's left of the Council. Huxley's lips curled into a smirk that didn't reach his eyes. Good. Let them believe they're alone. Humanity had never relied on arrogance. It had relied on adaptation. The Galactic Council had flaunted their shielded dreadnoughts, believing them invincible. The Zerzal had torn through them as if they were made of glass. But Earth's fleet did not depend on shields. Their warships, hidden in deep space for years, were built for survivability through unpredictability. Every vessel was a black-hulled predator, armed with technology humanity had never shared. Instead of energy weapons, they carried singularity cannons capable of bending gravitational forces into weapons. Instead of shields, they used gravitonic nullification fields, erasing their presence from standard scans. The Zerzal had never encountered them before, and they were about to learn. Carter's voice cut through the stillness. Final trajectory confirmed. We're in range. The time for silence was over. Huxley straightened, voice calm and measured. Drop stealth. Full burn toward target. The order was executed in an instant. Across the fleet, black hulls shimmered into visibility, a phalanx of lethal war machines emerging from the void like reapers in the dark. The USS Aegis, flanked by 3 Sentinel-class battleships, surged forward, engines roaring to life in synchronized fury. For the first time in their long history, the Zerzal hesitated. Their fleet shifted, dark forms twisting to reorient toward the unexpected arrivals. They had never known fear, never known what it meant to be hunted. But something in the way humanity's warships moved, the cold, deliberate efficiency, sent ripples through their hive-mind intelligence. Huxley leaned forward slightly. Open the channel. The bridge speakers crackled as his voice echoed across the system. Welcome to hell. With those words, the void ignited. The first volley was surgical. Singularity rounds tore through the battlefield, each shot warping space upon impact. The laws of physics bent in rebellion. One moment, a Zerzal destroyer was whole. The next, it was compressed into a singularity the size of a coin, vanishing into nothingness. There were no fiery explosions, no wreckage left behind, only absence. The Zerzal retaliated immediately, their weapons lashing out in a storm of phase-warped energy. But where the Council's fleets had burned, humanity's did not break. The nullification fields absorbed the distortions, rendering their attacks meaningless. Carter's fingers danced over the console, their adapting fast, shifting formation. Huxley's gaze remained locked on the battle. Not fast enough. The fleet pressed forward, relentless. Sentinel-class battleships moved in coordinated strike formations, cutting off retreat paths. Carrier-class warships deployed automated drone swarms, AIs guiding every maneuver with ruthless precision. The Zerzal had never faced enemies that thought like this. Johnson exhaled sharply. They're hesitating, and that was the key. Huxley had studied their kind, analyzed every scrap of intelligence recovered from failed border skirmishes. The Zerzal were used to overwhelming psychological dominance. They fought as an extension of their hive mind, a singular will driving their actions. They had never encountered true, unpredictable defiance. The moment they doubted their own invincibility, they became vulnerable. Huxley made sure they felt it. Deploy final judgment. Carter's hands moved over the controls. Target locked. In the depths of space, the USS Titan, one of Earth's largest warships, positioned itself at the battle's edge. At its core, a weapon unlike any other began to charge. It was the culmination of decades of black site research, humanity's answer to total annihilation. A star-collapsing payload. A weapon capable of turning a sun into a controlled singularity. A moment later, reality broke. A distortion of light expanded outward, rippling through space. Zerzal ships caught within the radius ceased to exist, their molecular structures folding inward before vanishing into the artificial collapse. Where once a battle group had stood, now only darkness remained. The Zerzal broke. Panic spread through their ranks. Their formations shattered, movement erratic, as if they could not comprehend what had just happened. For the first time in recorded history, they did the unthinkable. They retreated. Across the battlefield, the Zerzal vessels flickered and disengaged, slipping back into the void beyond known space. Silence returned. On the bridge of the Aegis, no one spoke for a long moment. Then, Carter let out a slow breath. They're running? Johnson smirked. Cowards. Huxley's expression remained unreadable. He had expected victory, but not so easily. They had shattered the Zerzal, forced them into retreat, but he knew this was not over. Not yet. Carter broke the silence. Sir, incoming transmission from the Galactic Council. Huxley exhaled. Let me guess. They want to talk? The screen flickered to life, revealing the shaken face of Chancellor Varas. Gone was the smug arrogance, the quiet condescension. In its place was the hollow stare of a leader who had realized too late that everything he had built had been an illusion of power. Huxley let the moment hang, waiting. Varas's voice was hoarse. General Huxley, you have saved us. Huxley's expression didn't change. No. We saved ourselves. Varas swallowed hard, the weight of unspoken truths pressing down on him. We must discuss what comes next. Huxley leaned back, considering his words carefully. The battle had been won, but the war was not over. The Zerzal had retreated, but that only meant they would return, stronger, more prepared. And when they did, it would no longer be the Galactic Council standing at the forefront. It would be humanity. He met Varas's gaze, voice cool. We do this on our terms now. The transmission cut, and the fleet regrouped. The galaxy had just learned what it meant to underestimate humanity. The ruins of Syrian Prime smoldered beneath a shattered sky. A world that had once stood as a symbol of galactic unity was now a monument to arrogance. Its towering cities reduced to twisted wreckage. Its oceans boiled away in the fires of war. The survivors, those few lucky enough to escape the initial onslaught, huddled in underground shelters, breathing the stale remnants of an atmosphere poisoned by the battle above. From the bridge of the USS Aegis, General William Huxley observed the aftermath in silence. The battle was over, but the war had merely shifted. The Zerzal had retreated, but that meant nothing. Predators did not flee out of fear. They fled to hunt another day. Behind him, Colonel James Johnson folded his arms, his gaze fixed on the tactical displays. They won't stay gone for long. They never do, Huxley murmured. His mind was already calculating, shifting through possibilities. The Zerzal had lost their fleet, yet that had never stopped them before. This was the first time they had been forced to retreat, and that meant their strategy would change. Lieutenant Commander Ryan Carter adjusted the communications interface. We received another request from the Galactic Council. There, he hesitated, lips pressing into a thin line. They're asking for our terms. Johnson let out a dry, humorless laugh. That didn't take long. Huxley glanced at the flickering transmission request, his face unreadable. So now they understood. He gestured for Carter to accept the transmission. The holographic interface shimmered, and Chancellor Varas materialized before them. The Zytherian's usual smug confidence had been stripped away, replaced by something closer to hollow resignation. His eyes were sunken, his posture rigid with suppressed tension. He was a leader who had seen his empire nearly collapse in a single day. Huxley let the silence stretch, waiting for Varas to speak first. The Zytherian exhaled slowly. General Huxley, his voice was measured, almost brittle. I acknowledge that we were wrong. He swallowed, as if the words physically pained him. Humanity has proven its strength, and we find ourselves in need of your guidance. Huxley's lips barely moved. Guidance? Varas straightened slightly. The council structure must be revised. The Zerzal were not merely an enemy. They were an existential threat. One we dismissed. One you warned us about. If humanity had not intervened, this galaxy would have fallen. He hesitated before forcing himself to continue. We propose that humanity take a leading role. Military oversight over council affairs. Tactical command of all defensive fleets. Johnson let out a low whistle, shaking his head. They're handing us the keys. Huxley studied the alien leader for a long moment. There was no satisfaction in Varas's words, only necessity. This was not an act of diplomacy. This was survival. The council had lost its credibility. No one would trust their leadership again. And now they were looking to the one species they had once considered primitive, reckless, and beneath them. Huxley's voice was steady, each word deliberate. The terms are simple. From this moment forward, the Galactic Council will no longer dictate interstellar military strategy. That authority now belongs to humanity. Varas inhaled sharply, but did not argue. You will disband your current fleet command structure and integrate your vessels into ours. No more bureaucracy, no more wasted time. If the Zerzal return, we will be ready. Huxley's eyes locked onto the Chancellor's. And when we give a warning, you will listen. Varas hesitated, as though resisting the final act of surrender. But he knew there was no alternative. It will be done. The transmission ended, and for a moment, the bridge was silent. Carter shook his head in disbelief. We just took control of the most powerful interstellar government in existence. Johnson let out a low chuckle. No, Carter. We just became the most powerful interstellar government in existence. Huxley turned back toward the viewport, his expression unreadable. The battle had been won. The war had shifted in their favor. But there was one last step to take. One final lesson to teach the Zerzal. Because they would return. And next time, they wouldn't just be fighting to dominate. They would be fighting to survive. Hours later, the USS Titan, humanity's largest warship, drifted into position at the edge of known space. Within its core, the Excalibur device was primed, a weapon designed not for war, but for erasure. The Zerzal homeworld lay on the other side of that void. The Supreme Commander of the Zerzal, RYTH-Zal, had sent a single message in the wake of their retreat. We will return. Huxley stood on the command deck, his expression cold. No, you won't. With a single order, the Excalibur fired. A ripple of energy expanded outward, a controlled gravitational pulse folding space itself. There was no explosion, no dramatic fireball, just a void, swallowing the Zerzal homeworld and every living thing upon it. One moment, an empire had existed. The next it did not. Johnson exhaled slowly. That's it then? Carter swallowed, his fingers still hovering over the weapon's interface. He had fired countless shots in battle, but never one like this. Was there another way? He asked quietly. Huxley's gaze didn't waver. No. Johnson placed a firm hand on Carter's shoulder. They would have done the same to us. Don't ever forget that. The young officer nodded, but his hands still trembled slightly. Across the galaxy, the news would spread. The Zerzal, once the greatest existential threat the known universe had ever faced, were gone. And humanity now sat at the helm of the Galactic Council, not as equals, but as its undisputed rulers. On Earth, the world watched the broadcast of the war's conclusion, and for the first time in history, they understood what they had become. No longer the underdogs. No longer the cautious newcomers to the stars. They had ascended. On the bridge of the USS Aegis, Huxley turned his gaze back toward the stars. The war was over, but history had only begun to write its next chapter. Humanity had won, and now the galaxy belonged to them.